Can I get your full name and date of birth for the record, please?
David Lohr, 9/14/70.
Thank you, sir. You're here on a new Superior Court case alleging adding harmful substances to food.
For 5 months, David Lohr traveled the length of California and throughout Arizona, poisoning food inside high-volume grocery stores before getting caught. His food targets of choice were rotisserie chicken, shrimp, eggs, beer, and ice cubes. And his stores of choice were Safeway, Walgreens, and Target. Because David had transversed nearly half of the length of the United States to commit these crimes, it's unlikely he was following up on local news reports related to the poisonings. Hence, the pleasure he derived from his criminal activities was likely just in the act itself. He was eventually caught after he had evolved his crime scene from grocery stores to public transportation. The police arrested David after a bus driver saw David dumping a noxious liquid out inside the bus. After being caught, David denied any wrongdoing, stating that,
"I did nothing wrong."
He continued,
"Hypothetically speaking, someone might have poured bleach under and around the food to make the air cleaner. So clean that you can see snow in mountains."
whatever that means. While David Lohr clearly had to be sick in the head to spend so much time and effort in his West Coast poison tour, his actions pale in comparison to the 5 criminals we're about to see. For example, consider Shankar Mishra, a man who pulled out his member on an international flight from New York so that he could urinate on a female passenger. While the act itself might not seem that much more demented than David Lohr's food poisoning expedition, it's the actions that surrounded the act that will make most listeners' blood boil. Shankar was a vice president at Wells Fargo and expected to get away with his actions due to his social status. Indeed, this first-class passenger had the flight attendants at his will, even succeeding in a request to be brought to speak to the victim after he had soaked her with his bodily fluids. The victim was traumatized and wanted Shankar to stay away, yet the flight attendants acted in line with Shankar's demands. The victim's request to change seats was also denied, and she was forced to sit in her urine-soaked seat for the remainder of the 15-hour flight. The airline did nothing immediately after the incident. While the airline did receive a complaint about Shankar's behavior the next day, nothing happened until 2 weeks later when the airline decided to punish Shankar with a whopping 1-month flight ban. It was only after this story went viral on India's social media that the airline contacted the authorities, who ultimately sentenced the man to 2 weeks in jail. This was a clear case of a man who believes he can get away with anything as so long as he holds social power, and unfortunately for society, he was right. But this sort of depravity isn't reserved only for the rich elite. Once a pervert from any rung of the social ladder gets a bit of power, he's likely to abuse it. Paul Gardner is one such case. On the surface, Paul Gardner was the average American family man living in a middle-class home with his wife and 2 elementary school-aged sons. Paul and his wife hired a 24-year-old live-in maid to help care for the children. But Paul's perversions became apparent when the live-in maid accessed his computer in an attempt to look for some educational games for the children. Instead of games, though, she found over 30 folders filled with videos of her in the bathroom doing bathroom things. She immediately searched the bathroom to find a hidden camera installed in an electrical outlet. The maid contacted the police and pointed her finger at Paul, who admitted to the possession of spy cameras and electrical prowess, but denied placing that particular camera. Now, while spy cameras installed for voyeurism are more prevalent than we would like, this isn't the sickest part in this story. No, the worst part is that Paul responded to the accusation by shifting the blame to his youngest son. Imagine growing up not only knowing that your father is in jail because he's a sex pervert, but also knowing that he loved you so little as to impute you for his depraved crimes. You can watch the full interrogation analysis at the link in the description.
Kids are total rebels, and I could absolutely see them doing something crazy like this.
Right.
Luke and Jake are...
While on the theme of throwing your own children under the bus, consider Heidi Littlefield. Heidi purportedly loved her children so much that she was willing to kill her ex to win custody, and kill she did. Her ex, Kelly, ate a bowl of odd-tasting oatmeal and felt sick shortly after. A few hours later, he texts Heidi asking,
"Did you do something to the oatmeal that was in my fridge?"
Heidi responded,
What the actual fuck are you talking about?
You were in my fridge last night and it tasted funny after a couple bites and now I'm lightheaded.
Heidi then responded by accusing Kelly of being on drugs, which was not without intent, as Heidi had used fentanyl as her poison of choice in an attempt to make Kelly's death look like an overdose. Heidi's last message to Kelly went unread. It wasn't until 2 days later that the police visited Kelly's house in a welfare check. Kelly was discovered to be dead on his couch, but the cause of death was oddly not an overdose, it was strangulation. In fact, Heidi had gone to Kelly's house after Kelly had ceased responding to her texts so that she could ensure that the job was finished. When she discovered Kelly passed out but still breathing, she located his favorite tie and strangled him while smashing his face into the ground. She wanted to make certain that her ex was dead. And while her story was one of love for her daughter, Heidi actually wanted her daughter to take the fall.
Are you cool with going to prison for the rest of your life?
She had asked her daughter prior to doing the deed. Heidi was sentenced to 115 years in prison after her daughter and her current boyfriend revealed the conspiracy to detectives. Are you enjoying the vid so far? If so, a like would be much appreciated to show your support for the channel. You can also now leave donations here on YouTube via this button. Super thanks to anyone who super thanks. Now, getting back to the depravity, here's another disaster of a human, Michael Mastin. Michael held the important position of managing the water supply plant in Donaldsonville, a small town, population 6,000. Security cameras documented Michael urinating in the town's water supply multiple times. Once arrested, Michael refused to explain why he had done what he had done. Perhaps Michael resented or looked down upon the people who lived in that small town. Michael himself did not reside in Donaldsonville, but an hour away in the city of Baton Rouge, population 1 million, and thus was not peeing in his own water. The psychology of Michael is not unlike that of a food service worker who spits in a customer's soda, but the sickest part of Michael's action was that this is not a crime from an overworked, stressed out food industry employee directed at a particularly annoying customer. No, instead, Michael, who was put in a governmental position of trust, was indiscriminately tainting a product that every member of the community was ingesting. But if you think that's bad, consider Fidel Lopez, who ripped his girlfriend's guts out of her. Yeah, you heard that right. However, I'm not the right person to describe this case gracefully, at least. I recommend you check it out on Morbid Curiosity's channel, link in the description below.
So what did you do at that point?
At that point, I get mad. I get really, really mad. And I can't believe it. The same when she told me about the go to Peru or whatever, it's when I start breaking the stuff, the wall and the glass and everything. And then the other point is when she was confusing me with him, calling him his name.